Welcome to the very first episode of Shak, the podcast. In Barbados, the Shak tree is called woman's tongue, a seemingly unkind name given to a tree that makes a lot of noise. This podcast is therefore dedicated to the uncontrollable voices of ordinary women sharing their thoughts, ideas, and dreams. Telling stories is ultimately how we pass knowledge, history, and experiences from one generation to the next. So my first guest under the Shak tree is Kerry-Ann McCollin, a fitting spot for my business partner and the sounding board for many a harebrained idea. Today we're going to talk a bit about her role as an HR professional. We spend so much of our time at work, and truthfully it factors heavily into our sense of self and often bleeds into our personal lives, whether we want it to or not. Kerry-Ann has been in this industry for over 12 years as an HR generalist, working in several industries, both unionized and non-unionized. Some of these industries include telecoms, tourism, financial services, and aviation. So welcome, Kerry-Ann, and thank you for being here. I'm happy to give you a chance to be on the other side of an interview for a change.
Definitely. Thank you for having me.
So to begin, what does being an HR professional mean? For me, what comes to mind is the obvious hiring and firing and reading and reviewing the many iterations of my CV. But really, what is it that an HR professional does?
It's funny you should mention hiring and firing. Contrary to popular belief, that's probably one of the very few tasks that are mythical when it comes to the HR profession. I find that most people think that usually that is the essence of being a human resources professional, where you just sit down, have interviews, hire and fire. But contrary to popular belief, in larger organizations, we facilitate a recruitment process. In the smaller organizations, you may find us doing some of the hiring where there may be only one or two departments and the numbers are quite small. But when you get to larger, medium to large entities, we see the HR professionals being more of a facilitator for the recruitment process. So we get everything set up, but the hiring manager or the heads of departments make the ultimate decision. We can advise on the best candidate, but the ultimate decision lies with that head of department or the hiring manager. So that's the myth. But being an HR professional, for me personally, it gives me the outlet to be able to help people. So I think that for myself, I can't speak for other HR professionals, but for me, I think my profession as my foundation helps me to be able to do that.
Okay. So though I'm sure that the next question is a bit overanalyzed by professionals and novices everywhere in light of the context of COVID-19, I'm still going to ask, how do you see workplaces changing in the coming years, and what role do you think HR has to play in that?
Well, to kind of piggyback off of the first question as well, now that COVID-19 is here, HR professionals, we tend to have a wider reach now, and the umbrella in which many different responsibilities are covered under. Now with COVID-19, we kind of are tasked with guiding employers and how to deal with the situation when it comes to having to shut down companies where there's no business, and following the government's protocols where companies have to, operate under reduced hours and where there's a curfew. I find that HR professionals now are being called upon to help govern the process, to be able to guide them as to what our labor legislation requires, and to make sure that, everything is being done as fair as possible from the business side and for the employee side as well. Answering the first question, when I said, it's not just about recruitment and selection. HR professionals, we cover a wide range of different tasks, whether it be training, learning and development, other aspects of grievance and disciplinaries and labor legislation, industrial relations, you name it, we're there. Even HSSE and business continuity, some of us take on those roles as well. So when it comes to COVID-19, I find that we're being called upon to dig deeper as HR professionals into opening up our, there's a word for it I'm looking for, into turning a new leaf in our books when it comes to understanding how we can kind of merge or marry HSSE business continuity and human resources as it relates to the state that we're in now with COVID-19.
So, I guess coming
I
back
hope that
a
answers
little
your
bit,
question.
well, coming back a bit to that, in terms of how you see the workplaces changing, I suppose that was more focused on HR. But do you see maybe, especially in the context of the current environment, but even outside of that, if you see that there are, what changes do you think we will see in workplaces in the coming years?
I think technology will probably be utilized more. Because what's happening now is that we found some organizations were unable to allow their employees to work from home because they didn't have the infrastructure built for them to do so. So something as simple as having a laptop or a software program installed, having VPN so persons could be able to function outside or away from the office, not necessarily work at home, but just away from the office itself. I know we're being called upon to have those roles that can work from home do so to keep as many persons employed as possible. We find that those persons who we believe should be able to work from home aren't able to because of the lack of infrastructure. So I find changes now would relate to technology, ensuring that from a business continuity perspective, employers are more readily prepared to handle these types of crises, and also not just for employees but for their clients and customers as well. How do we ensure that we're able to sustain the business? So I think technology will play a big role in the changing workforce right now.
Okay. So coming closer to home, and yes, based on your experience across several industries, how do you think HR needs to change or develop more in Barbados and maybe the region as a whole?
How it would need to change. It's a good question. There are many active changes happening now in HR. So I guess what I would like to see, or where I feel the need for changes, is just to embrace HR professionals more as business partners, and persons who are able to sit at the table with directors and executives and be able to be a part of that initial decision making process and not being pulled in towards the middle or the end of those types of meetings. The way the workforce could be negatively impacted on based on a decision. I find that in locally in Barbados, we still have HR professionals, not being seen as those types of persons who could contribute greatly when it comes to the I want to say more important decisions relating to the business, whether it be about finances or strategy. I find that persons don't see HR professionals as having the knowledge or the capacity to be able to help contribute to those types of decisions in meetings like that. And I find regionally it's getting better. Internationally, I think it's already done. HR professionals are seen as business partners. If we look at the offshore and international workforce, we are pulled in from the very beginning with legal and all the other team members when it comes to those bigger decisions. But I find we need to improve upon that locally. And I think regionally we're getting there. We're already seeing strides there as well.
Okay. So I guess leading on from that, if you had the freedom to implement one change in the, I guess, in the local workplace or within the local HR environment, if you had that kind of freedom and that kind of power, what would you change? What would that change be?
Oh, wow, that's a big question.
I know. I apologize. It
Um,
is a big question, but go big or go home.
exactly. I agree. I think I would like to see something bigger happen as it comes to merging value systems, merging diversity and inclusion. If we could have a single platform that merges everything together, not just for women, but I think for those other marginalized demographic, when it comes to when you work in certain companies and you see all the heads being a particular figure type with numerous letters behind your name. Not saying that education is not important, but there's still a voice for those who haven't necessarily, been past tertiary education level. There is a voice for those who haven't gone and received a doctorate. There is a voice for those who, are just creative naturally and have these wonderful ideas that just need a sounding board. And I feel as if you can merge diversity, inclusion, value systems, we can merge them together into one platform and have one voice or one section or, department for persons to be able to create, like have an innovative type of platform where ideas are birthed from and you can see them from beginning to end, through fruition, implementation, and working. I feel as though if I could just have one little tiny space or Zen room or department for that to happen in each organization, I would love to implement that. I think my former boss called it a Zen space, where you can relax, but where ideas and innovation could be birthed from. I think that is something I would love to implement if I just had the freedom to do so.
I think that is an excellent idea. And perhaps in the near future, you will get the opportunity, or at least I very much hope so. So on a
Here's
more
hoping.
it's true. On a more personal level, I mean, what are the parts of HR that you are most passionate about? What gets you up in the morning?
So I think most passionate for me would be, I wouldn't necessarily say recruitment and selection, because that process in itself is definitely not a huge passion of mine. But I think what keeps me going is when I see the expression on the person's face when you tell them you're successful for a particular role, whether it be face-to-face interviewing or video conferencing conversations, even telephone, you can hear it in their voice when they realize, what, I've gotten the job, this is one step closer to my ultimate goal, or maybe this is my ultimate goal. It never gets old to see the sparkle or the light in their eyes. It never gets old to hear the excitement in their voices. And I think the biggest thing is that when they actually get to the organization, when they come in, when they get there, that the onboarding process and the orientation is so exciting that it doesn't kill that spirit when they realize they've reached their goal. So I think the biggest thing for me, my passion is, and what keeps me going in HR is being able to see that light all the time, being able to have HR professionals ignite that fire, that that we will see that light when someone receives that news saying you are successful for this particular role. You have been successful, not just for the role, but as part of your dream. You've been successful in that next step, that next level. So that never gets old for me. And I think that's kind of what drives me to continue in the profession.
Okay, so I would assume that the part that you dislike the most would be perhaps dismissing unsuitable employees, but I don't want to be presumptuous, so I will, I'll take a listen as to what is the, the part you don't like about, HR, being an HR professional.
Well, yes, those conversations are difficult, extremely difficult. Not something you would want to ever have to do. But I think it becomes most difficult when it's a conversation where nothing is the individual's fault. Those redundancy conversations or those layoff conversations, or the conversations where you have to tell a group of persons, well, the department is no longer needed or the business is not functioning. And, where our CEOs are part of that conversation as well. We find that persons rely heavily on HR professional to write a script, make sure it's following labor legislation. But those conversations, the look on those persons' faces, everything is like, what? And it's usually something very sudden. It's not always something that can be foreseen. If a client pulls out suddenly, there's not always something that can be, forecasted or determined that you can prepare persons for it. So I think those are the toughest conversations because, it's not the person's fault. It's not like if the person breached a policy or decided to get violent at work and does something strange or, decides to steal money or anything like that, where you kind of want to rehabilitate that person during the conversation as well. But I think it gets more difficult when, this person has done nothing wrong but give up their best, give 100% every time they came to work, and this is what happens to them. So I think that those are the toughest type of conversations and, something that you wouldn't want to ever have to do.
Yeah, agreed. So you've been in this business for quite some time now. How would you say your views or your outlook has changed over the years? You know, you've gone from a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, university grad into the world of work, and now, you're a more seasoned professional, mother, wife. So I guess, how would you say your views have changed over the years, if they have changed?
Yeah, they have changed for sure. It's become heavier than you imagined when you first started out. You know, my first degree psychology, the basis was I wanted to help people, and this was a way to do it. And in doing that, you realize that you start to take on the problems of the world. You know, I'm throwing the finger quotations in the air. You started to feel as though you're taking on everybody's problem and you need to fix it. So I think one of the things that has changed is that in realizing you can't fix everything. So you've kind of grown and moved from I need to fix it, I have to fix it. There must be a way to fix it. Sleepless nights trying to fix it. Pressure trying to fix it, to realize, okay, so you can't ultimately be the fix. You can't be the person to fix it. What you need to try to do is to enable that person, equip them with the tools that they can fix it for themselves. So instead of you trying to fix it, you make sure that the person has the knowledge, they have the tools, they have the guidance, the training, the mentorship. You be a leader, a mentor. I want to say is the word I'm looking for, a coach. More like a coach for them to be able to fix their problem. That way something else comes up, it's easier to handle because they come to you, but they come to you with a solution as well. And I find balancing, taking on, all those problems and coming home. My husband had this analogy about, when we step to the door, you got to take off the jacket. So it's an imaginary jacket we take off and hang it up at the door, and we come in because there has to be an outlet. There has to be a way to not think or focus on the pressures of the day and the problems you're trying to fix, because then it could affect your family. So we take off the jackets and we put them at the door, and it's family time. And sometimes when you get a couple Z's in and the family's sleeping, sometimes you get up because your brain's a little more relaxed, but it's still working on the issue. You get up with a brilliant idea on how to help that person or how to enable them to help themselves. So I think what has changed for me is, yes, I'm going in as trying to save everybody and fix everybody's problems, to let me try to help them fix their problems. Then help to enable them to, if you understand what I'm saying, give them the tools
Yeah.
to work, to be able to fix their problems, and not enable negative behaviors where you are the person that has to fix it for them all the time.
Well, I think that was insightful, and that leads me maybe to another question. I mean, you talk about, you know, giving people the tools to do the things that they need to do, the tools to grow, and that kind of thing. So, I guess my question is, do you think that in the workplace that employees sufficiently utilize HR as as a space where they can learn these tools, or HR can help them, or do you feel people are still a little bit apprehensive of you know seeing HR as that kind of coach, mentor, supporter, and I'm more like the big bad guy. So I guess my question is, do you know do, do, are people coming to
Um,
access these tools that you have to share with them?
I think it could be twofold. So some people are coming, but in some circumstances, I think that HR professionals could also, with any organizations themselves, not the greater bodies, because I find Hermad does an excellent job, but in smaller, in smaller bodies, more on an individual level, I think HR professionals could also, I don't want to say advertise, but put themselves out there a little more. So you have to employees who come because they're aware and they know. What about those that don't? We can't necessarily, put blame on those who don't necessarily know they have a free resource for them to use to assist them, with any type of ideas they may have or a system to in their development, whether it be professional or personal. So I find that we could put ourselves out there a little more. We could explain to people what we do. A lot of youngsters still come in, and I say youngsters, I'm young myself.
Of
We
course we
still
are. Of
come
course
into
we are.
organizations not being, of course, not being fully aware of what HR does. We still kind of have those notions from our forefathers about HR, and to kind of get away from that, I find we need to put ourselves out there more. We need to advertise, every once in a while, send out some, snippets or some little tips as to this is what your HR team does. This is what we're here for. This is how we can help. So that person's, have that level of awareness. So they know, hey, I think I saw something the other day that said that this person could help me, plan my life cycle as it comes to my career, or, show me the next step or where I need to study, and tell me how to get financial aid at work for training and, for my studies, etc. They can let me know if I have study leave, different things. And I find that not everyone's aware that that's what we're here for. So it's twofold. Some come, but some don't come. Not because some are afraid, but not because they're aware and don't want to come. But some of them just don't know. And then I find from our side, we could do a lot more to let persons know we are here and what we're here for.
Okay. So lastly, a more whimsical question or morbid, depending on how you want to look at it. But how do you want to be remembered? How would you like to be remembered many years from
That's a really big question.
now? Yeah, it is. And
How
I
would I like to
sometimes
be
ask
remembered?
myself that, in my quiet moments. So I figured it's something I would ask you to see if you've given any thought to it.
Yeah, I would say, if I had to add a vain response, I would say my smile. So usually that's what happens. People are usually remember me for my smile. They'll be like, I saw you somewhere, your face looks familiar. Oh, it's a smile. Yes, I know who you are now. But that's just a
True,
natural
true
thing. I don't know where
story,
it
true
came from. I had
story.
it since primary school. Yeah. So it stays with me. I don't mind. I don't mind. It's there. But I would say on a more serious note, I think being what I would like to be remembered for most, I think just the impact you kind of have on person's. And it dawned on me when I was leaving my former employer, which is sad, sad, sad. Happy, yes, but sad. It's a great team, but I realized that you just never know the impact you have on person's lives. The number of persons that came to my office and shared different things I would have said to them, different things I would have done that had some significant impact that they remembered that I didn't even remember, had some impact on their lives. And you just never know who you touch. And in saying that, it kind of humbles you because it keeps you in check with your behavior. So, when you're just simply walking around doing your thing, your behavior, it kind of enables you to say, well, I need to be a little more cognizant of what I say and what I do, because you never know who's watching. You never know who I'm impacting. And you want to obviously have a positive, um, impact on person's life. So when, I got all these gift baskets from departments, and, persons coming, and this one young lady hugged me like she didn't want to let me leave or go. She was like, no, this is not true. And you're just so happy that you're able to mentor persons and have that impact. So I think already I'm doing what I really think I should be doing. I am humbled by it, and I want to continue to make sure I have that impact on persons.
Okay, great. So thank you, Kerry-Ann, for taking the time out to do this interview, to have this conversation. Thanks to all those joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, so thanks to those who joined us today, and we hope they enjoyed the session, and we look forward to receiving your comments and suggestions for topics and guests. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you.